My whole life, I've worked long hours. Yeah. I love what I do. I loved what I did when I was a financial planner, when I ran the accounting firm. I loved and I still love what I do now, but a lot of my output has always been demonstrated by either sales results or output of work. So now I'm in a role where I'm thinking about 3 to 5 years' time.
Yeah.
And there's no physical scoreboard for what I do immediately now.
Yeah.
And that for me is where I've always been a scoreboard. I've always been, my diary's 18 months in advance. I'm very structured. I'm very routine. I'm very consistent.
Yeah.
But now there's no scoreboard. Mentally, that's the thing that I'm trying to get my head around to go, you know what? You're making a difference in 3 to 5 years. You're not making a difference day to day.
In this episode of The Little Black Book, I'm joined by Nick Sinclair, founder of The Outsourced Accountant. TOA Global is a dedicated outsourcing solution for the accounting firms in the USA, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and across the globe. Founded in 2014, TOA has grown to an organisation with in excess of 1,500 accounting staff working with over 500 global accounting firms. In this episode, Nick shares how a trip to the Philippines in 2014 challenged the way he thought about how he ran his financial advisory business, which led to the establishment of TOA. He shares how he managed his transition out of the day-to-day management role and has become the chief cheerleader and supporter while maintaining alignment with his CEO. Nick talks about how focusing on a clear vision for the future has enabled the business to stay on track and focus on execution, and he discusses how TOA has scaled its team so quickly and the importance of proactively recruiting good people before your business needs them. Finally, Nick also shares how important it is to understand your numbers and the financial performance in a growing business. Welcome to The Little Black Book, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs who provide their first-hand experiences to help others learn and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Altitude Advisory. Altitude Advisory is a modern business advisory firm helping business owners build a better business for a better life. Mate, favourite movie of all time?
The Mighty Ducks.
The Mighty Ducks.
I really loved the movie.
Right.
Yeah, it stuck with me.
And anything particular about that, mate?
I think it was the team that shouldn't have won and that whole development of a winning culture and how that can happen.
Yeah.
And I was a young age when I watched it. I just loved it. But then I look back on the learnings from that now and I really relate it to business and I suppose life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it.
No, it's amazing how many of those sort of movies have that. I had somebody last week was talking about the Shawshank Redemption or Moneyball or Remember the Titans. There's so many good messages in a lot of those movies that you don't really quite appreciate at the time, and then you reflect back and you go, mate, that was really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% right. It's at the time when you're watching it, you don't necessarily get the learnings. It's later in life when you're going through some of those similar things that I think you can relate back to. Oh, hang on, that movie, the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's little things like that.
No, that's really cool. I know my team here in Adelaide, they get the shits on with me, or they might like it, they might half hate it as well, because I can always reference something back to a movie. And they go, oh, here we go. Here's another movie quote. Here's another movie reference. So, very cool. What about as a book that, as either as a child or a young adult, that had a real impact on you and why?
Yeah, look, I read a lot. So my goal this year is to read over 24 books. So I do thoroughly enjoy reading now. But I remember when I was a teenager and finishing school and a little bit lost, I read the book Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson.
Yeah.
And that probably really brought a lot of that entrepreneurial flair and just this desire for what is possible.
In terms of your reading, you just said, you read a lot of books. What do you mainly read? Is it, are you into the, business books, leadership, culture, stuff like that, or you're reading Harry Potter and, sci-fi mysteries?
Never read a Harry Potter or sci-fi. It is 100% business and autobiographies.
Yeah, okay.
So it's all about, culture, anything to do with leadership, business. Yeah. I really loved when I did get into reading, in my early 20s, the autobiographies.
Yeah.
And I think that's that. And in just the inspiring stories of what people have gone through in their lives and what they've been able to achieve, both in sport or business or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, really cool. Now, mate, are you a traditional reader or are you a audiobook listener?
traditional. Has to be the paper. You can see behind me all the books. That's, about a third of my books is on that stand behind me. But I love the traditional book. I just drift off. Yeah. If I'm listening to something, I get distracted and do something else.
Yeah. Mate, what about, travel? Is there a real transformative travel experience that you've had, and what particular impacts did that have on you as a business leader and entrepreneur?
Yeah, part of my, role within the business, particularly for the last 5 years, is I travelled every second week. So I travelled roughly 26 weeks a year, predominantly overseas. Yeah. There was a couple of really transformational. The big one was when I went to the Philippines for the first time as part of Entrepreneurs Organisation for the Global Leadership Conference. Yeah. And that was when TOA Global, the business that I founded and lead, started, was really from that trip, going over there, being around so many different entrepreneurs, but also understanding what the Philippines is and has to offer. Yeah. So that was definitely a big one for me.
Yeah, cool. Now, that's interesting. I might chase down that rabbit hole just quickly if we can. Now, what is it particularly about the Philippines that attracted you? Like, was it the culture, the people, the way they do business? What was the real attraction in that environment for you?
So look, originally it was, I was only going there I'd never heard of the Philippines or thought about the Philippines until I literally was part of the board with EO, and the trip was the Philippines, and it was partially funded by EO, and I was like, cool, I get to go and visit another country. But when I got there, the biggest thing that I saw was it's not that different to America or to Australia. There's certainly parts of it that are, but when you're in the capital city and you're in the main parts, it really is quite similar. Yeah. And I think for me, it was around if we could get cost-effective labour in work environments that are like ours, and we could get them to serve our clients and deliver a higher level of service, then there's a real benefit to that. Yeah. And I think that the English, they're a province of America for over 52 years. So American English is taught from birth. English was a key thing that really stood out. And it's got 7,500 islands. I haven't explored that many of them, but it's got some of the highest rated holiday destinations in the world, and most people don't even know about it.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I want to circle back to your business model later, but you started then TOA in 2014, and I guess you were in a more traditional finance game before you set up TOA. What then prompted the change? What prompted getting out of your original business and exiting that and then getting into something new?
I think it was it happened by default, to be honest. I'd love to say the business was built by design. It was, this whole strategy, but I was running a financial planning and accounting business. We were growing too fast. We couldn't keep up cost effectively or profitably with growth. Yeah. And we were running 3 to 4, support staff for every professional team member that we had. It just wasn't scalable. And a big part of it was, how do we deliver more to clients without having to charge them more? How do we really differentiate what we do? Yeah. And I think that being in the Philippines for that retreat, I was lucky enough that one of our members had a business over there in a back office, and I got to explore that. And I really saw the benefit that my business could get from that. Yeah. So it sort of happened by default that this business even really happened.
Yeah. Okay. Mate, you mentioned then just before, this cost-effective bit, and I know some people out there have this mindset. You're setting up a business and creating a business offshore with offshore labour, and you're taking jobs away from Australian kids or whatever it might be. What's been your direct experience with that? First of all, in your accounting, financial advisory business, but also then in terms of other clients and scaling and things like that for businesses?
It's a common thing that we hear, and I get told, and I've, been told I'm un-Australian and that many times. But the reality is we couldn't afford more people in Australia. Like when I had my business, we had 38 staff locally. We couldn't afford to put on the people we needed to continue growing at that stage. So being able to employ 3 or 4 people in the Philippines for the cost of one locally gave us real capacity, which meant that we could deliver more, which means we could take on more clients, we could increase our revenue. We could also fast track the careers of the people locally. And this is the biggest thing that we did, is we really analysed what is the work that our team members are doing. And is it the most meaningful work of their careers, or is it work that they have to do because there's no one else in the business to do it?
Yeah.
And is it high value? So when we really identified, a lot of our team didn't want to do the low value work, the process orientated work that was mundane and routine and consistent day in, day out. They wanted to do the work that added more value, that they really were passionate about, and to be honest, that they went to university to do. They didn't go to university to do, data entry or, basic work.
Yeah.
So I think it was really around, how do we get them to be doing the work that they're strong at, that they're, ideally employed to do.
Yeah.
But then how do we fast track their careers so that we get them, instead of taking 9 years to get through to a manager and partner level, how do we do that in half the time?
Yeah.
How can they start participating in meetings sooner? And then how do we get a team that is more cost effective to do that routine, process orientated work, that love doing that work?
Yeah.
Because it's still important work.
Yeah.
It's just more routine and
it's
structured.
just different. Yeah. It's just different type of work. And I think what I'm hearing, mate, is that by actually doing that and looking at what, high payoff activities or more valuable, by focusing on your client and understanding what's valuable to them, you actually then could benefit your team, which enabled you to grow, which then actually probably created more jobs in Australia than what you would have otherwise been able to put into place had you not created capacity in a different way.
Yeah, so there's a few benefits. Career progression happens quicker for your local team.
Yeah.
Obviously, the business has the ability to grow because you've got capacity. It's growing, it's making more money. It's making more money, it's paying more taxes. If it's growing, it's also employing more people.
Yeah.
So the majority of our clients are growing and putting on more people locally, which creates more jobs, but also they're more profitable.
Yeah. No, it's very good.
More money. And the secondary part of it is we are an Australian company.
Yeah.
So while our team members sit in the Philippines, we invoice all of our clients locally.
Yeah.
So we pay local taxes just like any other business.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. Mate, when you went to set this up, and again, I'm curious whether it's by design or by default, you've been really narrow in your focus. Unlike other providers of outsourced services or offshore labour, however you want to define it, is that you don't do everything. So you don't go and do marketing or build websites or do financial planning or whatever. You're focused on a real clear niche in the accounting sector. What was the reason for that? Then secondary to that, how important has that been in enabling you to grow and scale?
Yeah, look, it's been critical in us being able to scale and grow and remain relevant. I go after the philosophy of deep and narrow. And I think one of the challenges is, I ran an accounting and financial planning business. There weren't many providers over there that had someone that had that experience doing that. And I also realised that when we're enabling our recruitment function, and at the moment we get anywhere between 25 and 30,000 applications a year for roughly 1,000 roles. When I was looking at, and to be honest, we tried to do the back office for some of our clients when I had my accounting business, and we were trying to recruit engineers and web designers and, every type of role. And it was really difficult because when you've got an employee value proposition in the market and you're everything and anything, it's really hard to attract talent.
Yeah.
But when we started to just go and solely focus on the accounting industry and the roles that were relevant for that, we became quite relevant in the market. We are we're the second largest employer of accountants in the country.
Yeah.
And the universities feed into us. And being able to serve one type of client and one type of employee means that if you're 100% focused on that, you'll be able to really offer them what they need.
Yeah.
So if we were a generalist, then we would be able to make everyone happy, but we wouldn't be able to really provide them with an experience.
Yeah.
Because we'd be building things for everyone, not for our sole focused client.
Yeah. So just that inch wide, mile deep is just really important.
Yeah, and I think that, I was around, a lot of our EO board was led by Rob Nixon, who I know that you're having on this podcast.
Yeah.
And he was very focused around niching.
Yeah.
So I was around people that were successful in niches that they operated.
Yeah.
So being around other entrepreneurs and business owners that had that philosophy, and I learned what they did wrong in the past, and I also learned what they did well and why it was so focused, because opportunities come at you all the time, as you would know. But it's being able to say, no, I want to stay course and I want to go where I need to go because it's going to be beneficial for the business in 5 or 10 years. I mean, I got offered 2 years ago by a VC fund a lot of money to then go into another vertical. And it was tempting. It was a lot of money and it would have enabled us to grow at a quicker rate. But then I said, I don't want to serve 2 people. I want one master. I want to serve one person. And that person is accounting and financial, services.
No, it's a really good point. Now, mate, we just mentioned the growth and how fast it's growing. You're the second largest employer of accountants. Now, when I first met you or got to know you, we met really early in your infancy. I think
you're at our first Christmas party.
Correct. It was actually, I think it was less than 100 employees then to now in excess of 1,700 that are engaged by the accounting firms that you work with. How have you gone about making sure that of those 25 to 30,000 applicants that come in, that there's cultural alignment, that you make sure that you're on the same page, both internally in your team that work directly for TOA, but also similarly for those candidates that are coming in? How culturally have you gone about that?
I think the key thing is, and this is really the role of what I see a founder is that energy and that vision and the passion for the business and where the business is going. So it's really around enabling the business to understand what the vision and mission and values are of the company. Because as it continues, I mean, we're across, 5 countries. We've got staff placed. We've got clients in 4 countries. Our main workforce is in the Philippines. We have a global leadership team of over 25 people. And we've got some amazing leaders. But I think that you can bring as many A players. I mean, and I always relate it back to sport. You could have the best players in the world in one team, but if they're not being led in a direction to succeed, and they don't know what success is, then it doesn't matter how great the team is. So I think that's a large part of it, is ensuring that. I think the other key thing is ensuring that your team know who the client is, and understanding who you are there to serve, and what the difference is between what you're paid to do and customer experience. It's very different.
No, mate, I reckon there's some really good points there. So what do you do now? Because I know you transitioned from being the CEO to now call you the CCL, the chief cheerleader by the sounds of it. That visionary. How have you gone transitioning out of that CEO role and appointing an external to do that to what you do now? What's been some of the key, I suppose, what was some of the key triggers to make you realise it was the right time, and how have you managed that without feeling like you needed to go back there? Well, this person's now got the steering wheel to my baby, and not get back in their grill, so to speak.
Yeah, look, it's a challenge. I mean, definite clean alignment with the leaders and particularly the CEO that's running the business. I think that when I look back, I've always known what I'm strong at. I always know what I'm good at, but more importantly, what I'm not good at. And I'm great at strategy. I'm great at, the cheering or the championing of the business. I'm great on stage and I love talking to clients and I love presenting. But what I know I'm not good is actually making that strategy come to life. And when I had my accounting and financial planning business, I had a general manager and Diane ran the business. And I was able to do what I love doing, which is sitting in front of clients. And then I apply those same concepts here, is that I know what I'm good at doing. I'm not arrogant enough that I need to think that I need to control and manage everything. And I've seen over the years, by employing really, really competent people that are better than you, the amazing things they can do to your business. But I suppose I've been lucky in a way that when Craig, our CEO, came in, he made a restructure 6 months after he came in and asked me to take on marketing for 6 months. So I was acting CMO and it was meant to be for 6 months, but it ended up turning into just under 3 years. So for 3 years, I had 1 foot in the operational camp, but 1 foot out. So I knew enough of what was going on to, keep my temptation of knowing what's going on. but then 1 foot out where I all care and no responsibility is almost what I say. I had my marketing team of 25. I directed them. I saw what was going on, but I was able to step out and not be involved. But most recently, in January this year, which is 3 months ago now, I stepped out of being the CMO and we brought in a CMO.
Yeah.
And it's probably been the biggest challenge for me, in all honesty, is around not being involved in the operations and in some cases being the last to find out about things and understanding and being okay with that. And what I've really struggled with, and I have a CEO coach and I have for a couple of years, is my whole life I've worked long hours. Yeah. I love what I do. I loved what I did when I was a financial planner, when I ran the accounting firm. I loved and I still love what I do now, but a lot of my output has always been demonstrated by either sales results or output of work. So now I'm in a role where I'm thinking about 3 to 5 years' time.
Yeah.
And there's no physical scoreboard for what I do immediately now.
Yeah.
And that for me is where I've always been a scoreboard. I've always been, my diary's 18 months in advance. I'm very structured. I'm very routine. I'm very consistent.
Yeah.
But now there's no scoreboard. Mentally, that's the thing that I'm trying to get my head around, to go, you know what? You're making a difference in 3 to 5 years. You're not making a difference day to day.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really interesting point. And I know there's a lot of us that struggle with exactly that. So, okay, what is this meaningful? How do we go about that? Given that role was just effectively in its infancy now, that you're operating without a scoreboard, so to speak, how are you going to make sure that what mechanisms have you put in place to feel like you're on track and contributing and adding value?
Yeah, look, I had a coaching session. It was funny enough this morning, and there was another coach was in it, and he comes from a very large global listed company. And he related the story of the CEO, that he said when the CEO stepped down, who was the founder of that business, he went straight up into the player's box where he was then the owner.
Yeah.
He said, but what he really needed to do was be the coach on the sidelines and bring in that energy and cheering. And that's really where I look at it now and go, I'm still involved in the business. I'm still passionate about the business. I want to connect the business with the industry. I want to connect our team members and our clients. So I need to be close enough to the action.
Yeah.
But I'm not on the field playing.
Yeah, okay.
So I need to bring the energy, but I can't be the one throwing the ball anymore.
Yeah.
So it's about how do I enable and how do I suppose, bring the vision and passion and customer-centric approach without getting in the middle and trying to tell them how to play the ball or do what they should be doing.
Well, if we could liken it to kids' sport, mate, you've almost become the chief orange cutter-upper.
It is different. And I think that's part of my struggle is that, how do you value what you do? And I think it's, they always say being a business owner is lonely, but I can tell you now, when you get a business to a point where it has a leadership team that genuinely runs the business, that you don't need to be in day-to-day operations, it's even lonelier.
Yeah. No, I bet. Now, it's interesting, this dynamic too, and I'm really curious to hear how you manage this. But you brought Craig in, he did the restructure, and you're the owner and presumably sitting on the board, and you're making a decision to appoint him, and he effectively reports to you as a board. He's then come to you and said, I'm going to appoint you as the chief marketing officer, and he's then put you below the line as well. So how did it actually go, and how did you manage effectively having accountabilities or reporting requirements, if you like, in terms of your role as CMO, going up to Craig, who then was effectively reporting to you as the founder and the chairman of the board?
Yeah, look, I probably got away with a lot more than a normal executive would, but I think that I always look back and go at it and go, it actually helped us to be really aligned in where we're wanting to go.
Yeah.
Because if we weren't 100% aligned and 100% focused on the outcomes, we would have clashed, because it's easy. Like if I'm having to report on the function to him, but then he's having to report on, I suppose, the business performance. If we were not aligned, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So I look at it back and I go, the learnings of, ideally I wouldn't have done that role for that long. It was a necessity. It was something that I probably enjoyed, and at the time I was doing an okay job at.
Yeah.
So from a business point of view, the timing of me doing that was right.
Yeah.
But the alignment that we got through that where we've never really had any friction in 3.5 years. We've always had alignment.
Yeah.
We don't always agree, but we have alignment. And I think that looking back, it now makes it easier for me to actually stay out of his lane and let him do what he needs to be doing, not just now, but over the last few years.
Yeah.
Because of that alignment.
Yeah, cool. So, and just touching on that, what do you guys do and what mechanisms do you have in place to make sure that you stay aligned? Do you have daily phone connections? Do you go and have breakfast twice a week, or how do you set up the communication structures and stuff like that to make sure that you guys stay on the same page?
Yeah, look, we follow the scaling up philosophy. So we run, weekly meetings, daily huddles, monthlies, quarterlies, yearlies, but I'm not involved in any of that anymore.
Yeah.
So I operationally stopped attending those meetings well over 12 months ago. Even when I was CMO, I didn't attend them.
Yeah.
So that Craig could run what he needed to run. The way that I connect now is we have, through our technology stack, dashboards.
Yeah.
So we have dashboards for everything. So if I want to know the cash flow, the P&L, if I want to understand sales, commencements, recruitment, I can go into dashboards that are live and get those numbers. And I am very analytical and data-driven. So I don't need to ask questions because I just go into a BI report and I can dig down as far as I want to.
Yeah.
So I think having clear numbers is very, very critical and important that, as an owner, you can look at and understand what are the key drivers of the business. And as long as they're going in the right direction, you don't need to get in the way.
Yeah.
And then I think that I've got a pretty clear meeting rhythm. So every fortnight I meet with Craig, our CEO, and then every month we also do a business performance review. It's like a board meeting.
Yeah, okay.
We just call it business performance.
Yeah.
And then on a quarterly basis, I'm involved in the QBRs, so the quarterly business reviews, where all of our global leaders report on what happened last quarter. More importantly, what are they doing the next 3, 6, 9 months?
Yeah, okay. So, and I presume you're in there as an observer and somebody to ask questions, not necessarily a contributor as such.
Yeah, I don't present at all, but I'm definitely there to and this is probably something that I've had to learn to do, and I haven't nailed it yet, is ask better questions. And that's what my coach always says, Nick, you no longer provide the answers, you ask the best questions. Yeah. And your success is the better questions you can ask. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I think we always try and employ smart people, and it's a folly to employ smart people and then tell them what to do.
Yeah, disable them.
Yeah, so
you run an accounting practice. You're paid to give advice all day, every day.
Yeah,
and I think that's what I learned the most from Entrepreneurs Organisation was that you can only talk from experience. And I think that that's helped guide my journey now to where I can't give them the answers even if I know it. And even if I see a train wreck coming up, I need to let it happen.
Yeah.
But I need to enable to ask the best questions to help guide them to where they need to.
Yeah. No, I think that you make a really good point there in terms of, not just leading your team, but, them working with your clients and as well to realise what their pressure points or friction points are, is that you need to be, well versed in whatever industry or whatever sector you're in to be able to ask really good questions to get to the real root of the issue or solve problems. Yeah. We've spoken a bit about the Philippines and how you came to be there. You also mentioned, every second week you're on a plane over there. I can imagine that put a huge amount of pressure on you personally, family, or all those sort of things. What were some of the challenges that you faced as an individual and as a leader in terms of building this business? And how did you work through those, or how did you manage those?
Yeah, look, it's been a learning journey, and I've certainly learned the hard way in a lot of ways. I mean, I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I could work, endless amounts of hours. I don't see that as being a thing. And when you travel and, I'm experiencing new things. I'm going to America, Canada, like all these different places. So for me, that part of it's really exciting. But then on the flip side, you can't have all the burners in your life working perfectly. If your business and you're allocating that much time to that, then either your family's going to suffer, your personal relationships will suffer, your weight or health will suffer.
Yeah.
And I've certainly, juggled those over the years. I mean, my first marriage and I got divorced and I'm remarried, but I definitely look back in hindsight and go, could I have done more to not have that end in the situation that it did? And was my passion and desire to do what I was doing contribute to that. And I definitely look back and go, yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Would I change it? Well, probably not. But I think you need to be able to reflect and go, what are your priorities, and be very clear on that and where you're going. And I suppose recognizing you can't do it all.
Yeah.
But one thing that, when I did go through the marriage that ended, the focus for me was always my kids.
Yeah.
And that was even when I was married. We both prioritized the kids. And so when I did, and that's why I travel every second week, when I'm not traveling, I literally drop the kids at school every day. I pick them up. I mean, I coach my son's basketball. I don't even know how to play the game, but I'm the coach of his team for the last 3 seasons. And I'm very, very active in my kids' world when I have them. But when I don't have them, which is every second week, I'm then very focused on business.
Yeah.
But it is a challenge. Look, it's hard to – I haven't met anyone that's got this. There is no such thing as work-life balance. I think it's about how do you integrate it all together.
Yeah.
And there's no right answer. I mean, it's different for everyone. I love what I do. I love work. So I'm always going to work.
Yeah.
It's about how do I also – I have 12 to 13 weeks off every year on holidays with my kids, and I spend that quality time with them.
Yeah.
So – I think it's that balance.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'd be interested just to, explore, perhaps your relationship breakdown just for a sec. That one of the things I know I struggled with a lot early on was, like you, I love working and getting in there, and you're putting in long hours, and you're building an asset, or you're building a business, or you're looking after clients, or you're doing all these things to grow something. And sometimes not always that communication doesn't always translate to home. So what are you doing this for? Now, do you feel that like some of those challenges or that you went through was that perhaps you and your first wife weren't aligned, or she wasn't on the same journey with this business as you? And with the benefit of hindsight, what could you share with other entrepreneurs to say, well, if you want to go and grow this and you're all in on your business, I wish I did this differently, or I didn't do that very well in terms of engaging my wife and take her on that journey with me, and that was part of the problems. Is that fair, or is that?
No, it is. It's definitely. I mean, that's 100%. You've just summarised what it was, and I think that my wife at the time was a stay-at-home mother. She was raising our kids. She didn't have real career aspirations at that time. That was what she loved doing, was raising and growing our kids. And when I was growing a business and so involved in it and so passionate about it, it was probably a couple of years later that the real, I suppose, separation of where we were both at in life really came apparent. And it sort of, I say it snuck up on us, but it snuck up over 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Because you don't do that. So I 100% agree. I mean, for anyone that is, you need your family behind you. My family definitely supported me. My ex-wife definitely supported me and where I wanted to go. But there was a disconnect to my passion and energy for it versus, she didn't necessarily want a business overseas. She didn't want a business across 5 states and 5 countries and everything else.
Didn't want you to be away every second week.
So getting that, I suppose, the true buy-in, not just I'll support you because it's what you want to do. The true buy-in of these are the pros, these are the cons, this is the effect that it's going to have, but these are also the side benefits of what it's going to have, and having true agreement and alignment on that
is really important. Look, I completely agree on that, and I know one of the key things in our business growth and progression is that we've made a conscious effort to actually engage our spouses in, well, what does this actually mean? This is the goal setting, this is the direction, this is what it actually means, this is the consequences that are going to come of that, this is what it's going to mean financially and all those sort of things, so that they are on that same journey, and they're either saying, well, we're okay with that, or no, we're not okay with that, and what can we do differently? So I think that's a great share, mate. So thank you for that. What about other obstacles in your career that you've had to overcome, or other challenges?
I think growth is one, and when I was starting out, I was all about growth. I was all about the bigger aspirations, and I think that if you want to continue to grow a business, you need to understand the consequences that come with that. And I think that, I reflect back on my early accounting and financial planning business, and we were growing at a rapid rate, and I always sacrificed profit because I had a longer term vision of that, of where I wanted to go. But I talked to a lot of business owners, and I don't think they have that clear strategy. If there becomes a point where You don't just keep growing for growth's sake. You need to be profitable. Cash flow is obviously king.
Yep.
And I think having a very clear strategy of at what stage do you grow at what rate, but then when do you slow it down? And I think for me, it's about, can you continue to deliver the customer experience that your customers are paying and deserve?
Yeah.
And is it part of the strategy? And I look at a lot of companies that raise money and they want to grow fast and they dilute their ownership and all of that because they want to become this, and then they own, they sell for a couple of $100 million, but they own like 500 grand worth of value.
Yeah.
And I look at it and go, it sounds great, but it's probably not as good as what it is.
Yeah.
So being strategic, and we're very strategic in investing in the people we need for the next 2 to 3 years' time, 2 to 3 years before we need them, not when we need them.
Yeah.
So we do sacrifice our profitability to invest back into the business, but there's a very clear strategy around it.
Yeah.
So as opposed to, I see a lot of business owners that don't necessarily understand their numbers enough, and they're doing things without understanding the longer term consequences to it. And that can be both by spending too much money, but it can also be they're not investing in their people that they need in 12, 18, 24 months.
Yeah.
Because they want to take more money off the table now. They want more cash out of the business.
Yeah.
Which is great, but it's going to disadvantage you in 2 years' time.
Yeah. No, you and I think you're exactly right. And I mean, one of the things I do, mate, is I run business growth and business builder workshops, and I think business owners struggle to understand that for every dollar of profit you make, there's really only 5 spots that it can go. The government's going to take some in tax. The bank, if you've got some debt, they're going to want that back. You need to live and eat. You can save for the future, or you can reinvest back into growth. Now, 2 of those things are generally fixed. The bank put the rules around you, and the ATO or the government put the rules around you. The other 3 are a choice. And you can't, if you make $100, you can't put $100 in each of those. Well, I want to go on holidays, or I want to live, or I want to take money off the table, but I also want to put $100 back in growing the business. And you need to understand those levers, which I think is really important that you mention that. And I think your point about having a clear vision or a clear strategy of what that looks like, and saying, okay, well, I'm prepared to sacrifice in this bucket because I know it's going to translate over into that bucket. You're making an informed decision, which comes back to, like you said, understanding your numbers. I also love your observation, invest in your people before you need them. So I think they're really good observations and learnings, mate. So thanks for sharing those.
Can I just make one point about investing in your people? I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of businesses have is they say that attracting the right people is hard.
Yeah.
But when you're always employing after the fact of when you need them, it's hard to go out and build relationships and nurture those relationships and attract the best people.
Yeah. When
you're going to the job market, you're going to basically slap an ad on Seek and hope that, you get an A player, which is unlikely that you're going to get an A player from, unless the timing is absolutely perfect. So I think having that clear strategy of who you want over the next couple of years and what the role looks like enables you to build relationships with people. And then when the timing's right, it'll just happen.
Yeah, correct.
As opposed to we're behind in our work. We need to put someone else on because we can't get it. We can't deliver it to what our clients are paying us now. And let's go and try and find the quickest person we can get in and hope that they'll do a good job.
Yeah. It's that whole different mindset of proactively recruiting versus reactively recruiting. And we've seen it happen 100 times over. If you're recruiting when you need somebody, it's actually too late. And you end up sacrificing something just to get a bum on a seat. So I always love, and I know you've seen this, like Jack Daly, who I know you know well as, he talks about always, should always be recruiting because you've never got enough A-grade players. And, if you're always recruiting in at the top, putting A-grade players in the system, well, you can afford for a couple of D-grade players to drop out the bottom.
Yep. So and it is that grafting, and it's that continuously evolving and growing your team. Winners want to play with winners. And that's if you've got, B or C grade players on your team, then the others will drop to their level.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So, mate, do you have a life motto?
I have several. I think the main one is do the work. That's a big one for me. Is nothing comes easy. You've got to do the work. There is no such thing as, a 4-hour work week and earning millions of dollars. You've got to do the work to get the results. But I've always focused on delivering an experience to our customer, and the money will follow. I've never been driven by the money that comes from business. I've always been driven by achieving success for our clients, and I know that the money will follow.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And as you said, do the work hard. And it's a great lesson for probably that you're teaching your kids at the same time. Get in there, do this bit extra to get ahead. You're right. There's no magic fairy that's going to come down and make it easy.
Unfortunately,
no. Do you have a mentor or a coach?
I think you
mentioned you got a CEO coach.
For the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I've always had mentors throughout my journey.
Yeah.
And I've always went and found them. But I've been working with a guy called Rafe Wilkinson from CEO Coaching International for a couple of years. And it's been great. He comes from an NFL background, so he played professional NFL.
Yeah.
And he also ran a really successful business. So again, he asked me the questions that I don't want to ask myself. And he also coaches our CEO, and that's where a lot of our alignment comes from, in that he's coaching both of us.
Yeah.
And he's an internal mediator without either of us knowing.
Yeah.
So it definitely has helped our alignment.
Yeah. Cool. Does Craig know that you've got the same coach?
I introduced him. At times, Craig says, "Look, I feel like I'm being managed by Rafe."
Very cool. What about for the business? Do you have a formal board or an advisory board or anything like that you work with?
Not at the moment. So we have over the years. Originally, I had an advisory board for my financial planning and accounting business. And what I realised pretty quick with what didn't work was they're all suppliers of ours.
Yeah, okay.
So they're all people that told me how wonderful I was, not the reality of what they should have been.
Yeah.
And that was because we were paying them to provide a service to the business. And if they, said the wrong thing, then that could jeopardise, us as a client. So I definitely learnt that the hard way. We're definitely looking at putting in place a board at the moment. We've definitely got unofficial advisory panels.
Yeah.
There's definitely people that we reach out to and run ideas by and counsel and run strategy over.
Yeah.
But not a formal one. But that's probably our next evolution now that I'm no longer operational in the business.
Yeah. No, very cool. Mate, this has been great. I really appreciate you giving up your time. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
I've certainly enjoyed it.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Nick Sinclair from TOA Global, and thank you for joining us on The Little Black Book.